come on in. You're probably like, she's back on my YouTube again. Yeah, I'm back, y'all. I'm back because we are now in the season where we're getting these, what I call exit interviews from the cast of Ready to Love, which means once they get booted off, they do these exit interviews, typically on Christal XO's channel, or sometimes they do it on Little Black Book or different YouTubers. So I call these the exit interviews. Remember back in the day when you used to tell your job you was leaving, or maybe you got fired, and they said we need to have an exit interview with you. Well, this is the exit interview for Kravaya. Well, wait a minute. They don't even do exit interviews no more, right? Because nowadays, folks just quit. They just say, I ain't coming in. They be quitting on TikTok and Instagram. But anyway, last year I did these videos. I really enjoyed them because what it did was it gave me an opportunity to see whether or not did these people get a bad edit, a good edit. Did I change my mind, or maybe something I thought about them for the better or for the good? So we're going to keep it rolling this year with the same format. And that is, after I watch the exit interview, I'm going to tell you what I think. It's just me. It's my YouTube channel. It's just me. Do I think that Kravaya got a good edit, a bad edit, or was the edit okay? And I'm going to tell you with Kravaya, I think that she might have gotten a good edit. Oh, y'all. After I actually watched the Kravaya interview, I actually got a little bit saddened because I never really thought that she was all the way a gold digger, but I thought some of her dating missteps or some things that maybe how she's missing it out here, because she's a beautiful girl, was because she was concentrating too much on, say, material wealth. It is more than that. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to go in it. So pull up a seat, get you a cup of coffee or something, because we're going to be here a minute. We're going to be here a minute. This exit interview that Christal XO ended up doing, to be honest with you, it turned into a dating session. I thought we were just going to go on there and start hearing about what she was thinking on the show, answer some questions we had from the show. We did a little bit of that did happen, but it actually ended up turning into a dating coaching session. And I think Kravaya gonna need some more sessions. Kravaya gonna need some more sessions. And maybe Christal XO is dropping a book, y'all. So I'm gonna give the plug on that. She's dropping a book today. And I forget the name of it, but go check it out. Go to her website. I'm sure she'll have it up there. And I hope she gave a free copy to Kravaya. Whatever the date is, whatever the book is, I think it is about dating. I hope she gave Kravaya a free copy. I think Kravaya is going to need some additional help out here. So let's get into what I think is going on with Kravaya. First of all, I want to start with all the compliments for Kravaya first, because I want to make sure I don't give the impression that I don't like Kravaya, because I do like Kravaya. One of the things I would say I was really impressed with is Kravaya is a wonderful public speaker. She's very articulate. I think whatever she does, I think she's a brand strategist, digital strategist, whatever. I can imagine that she's very good at her job. She's enthusiastic. She's convincing. Like I said, she's good looking, so she's easy to watch and look at when she's probably presenting something. I bet Kravaya makes a lot of money for whatever company she works for, because I think she's well competent in the field in which she works. That I really do believe. So I'm a little bit miffed, since she is a digital strategist, how somehow that ability to strategize on how to connect with people in the digital world, or to get people to, I don't know, to purchase products or watch things or whatever, to draw customers in. I'm a little bit miffed on how she can't translate those strategy skills to dating. Because dating is a strategy, people. It ain't just a wish list. It actually is a strategy. Just like a company can't come out and say, I just want all the customers. I want all these customers to buy my product. I want all these customers to come and watch whatever she's helping them with. That's not enough. A wish is not enough. A desire is not enough. You have to have a strategy to go along with your wish and your desire. And being that Kravaya puts together strategy for all this other stuff, I am miffed at how she is rolling out here with this dating strategy. And no matter how much people tell her her dating strategy is off, she sticks with it. She don't want to change. She don't want to adjust. Now, this happens to a lot of people, not only women, men, people, that we can find success in our business world. We know how to adjust. We know when things aren't working. We know how to say, oh, that's the strategy I used over here to get a job. But now that strategy doesn't work. I'm going to do a new strategy to get another job, to get promoted. We're solving problems on our job. We come up against problems. We experience failures in our careers. We say, I'm going to adjust so I don't have those failures again. But somehow or another, when it comes to dating, people pick a strategy. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I want. And even though it's a failure, they say, too bad, I'm sticking with it. Because what they say is, I don't want to settle. This is the best strategy. I'm going to keep it. And they don't just keep these strategies for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. People be keeping these strategies for 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. So in this video, I really hope that if anybody's out there listening to me and you have a strategy that you've been working at in dating, and you've been working the same strategy for more than 4 years, and it hasn't produced what you wanted to produce, that maybe you need to change your strategy. Just think about it a little bit. Just think about it just a little bit. First of all, I would say this. Now to get on to the other parts, I'm going to say this. Kravaya really isn't, I really wouldn't classify her as a gold digger. Because gold diggers are like, that's their singular focus. Like, that's all they want is to meet a man with money, meet a man with money. They could care less about any other parts of the man. All they're interested in is money, 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 money. That's not Kravaya. I don't think Kravaya is a gold digger. Now, does she want a man with money? Absolutely. Does she want a man that has financial means? Absolutely. But her purpose isn't singularly focused on that. She is not only about money, she's got even a bigger area of things that she's focusing on. And so what she says is people classify her as high standards or she's picky. And she says, no, my standards aren't high and I'm not picky. So I'm going to tell you something about picky people. I don't know if any of you guys are here that also watch my videos on Married at First Sight. And we're dealing with a young lady over there. Actually, we're dealing with a young lady and a young man who are both so-called picky in dating. And a lot of people like to assign good characteristics to being picky, good characteristics between so-called high standards, as if people who don't have their standards have low standards. I don't know. Or they know what they're worth, but everybody else who isn't as picky, they must not know what they're worth. That's it. You will often find that people who are very picky or have very high standards, they're often using that as a shield. That's what they're doing. They're using pickiness and extremely high standards as a shield to protect them from some other danger they perceive, right? They don't want to experience what could possibly happen to them if somehow they lower their standards or they become much less picky. If somehow they come down here with everybody else whose standards may be here in the middle, they don't want to experience some of the things those people are experiencing. And so therefore, they hold on to their pickiness and their high standards. So that way they're not sort of caught in some sort of a danger. That's really what it is. It really is a shield. It's the same way you talk to people who have walls up. I've often talked about that. Walls. walls of protection because I don't want you to get to know the me. And I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna go through this for a while, like I said, and I'm gonna tell you some of the things that Kravaya said that tells me she uses her pickiness and her high standards as a shield of protection for herself because she is protecting herself from some danger that she perceives, or she believes that if she gets rid of her pickiness and she gets rid of her high standards, then what will come her way will be something that she won't enjoy. And so what happens is you can get stuck in this sort of fantasy world because when you're behind a wall or you have shields all around you, you really are cast off and shut off from the real world. It's a fantasy world because you're living with a mindset that, you know what, doesn't really make any sense. It's almost quite delusional in some ways, but it's a fantasy land. And when I look at Kravaya and I look at some of the things she was speaking about, her high standards, the first thing that came to my mind was she's looking for Santa Claus. She is looking for Santa Claus. Y'all remember back in the day when you believed in Santa Claus or your kids believed in Santa Claus? And do you remember when they got older and people started telling them there was no Santa Claus, but the kids didn't want to believe it? They were like, no, 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 there is a Santa Claus. There is a Santa Claus. They refused to believe that there wasn't a Santa Claus. And the reason why they didn't want to let go of the fantasy was because one of the things they were afraid of was they would stop getting the gifts. They were afraid that if I stop believing in Santa Claus and my parents don't know that that there's no real Santa Claus, would that mean my parents stop giving me gifts? Does that mean I won't get no gifts on Christmas? So if I have to keep believing in Santa Claus to keep getting the gifts, then I'm going to keep believing in Santa Claus. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remain in a place of delusion. I'm going to remain in this place of fantasy land because what I don't want to happen is I don't want to be harmed and no longer receive gifts. That's a worse condition. I'd rather stay in delusion and believe in Santa Claus than possibly lose a gift. This is what Kravaya is doing. Kravaya still believes in Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is the man that meets all her high standards and pickiness. Kravaya is waiting on Santa Claus, y'all. And she says, I'm not getting rid of it, no matter what you guys tell me that he doesn't exist, no matter what anyone says, I'm not getting rid of it because then I would have to deal with all the things that come along with having to deal with a man that doesn't have all these things I want. And that's what I don't want to have to do. I don't want to have to deal with anything that comes along with a man or person that doesn't meet all this criteria. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to this vision and I'm going to look for that person because even though I'm not successful at finding that man, I'd rather keep working over here and looking for him than working over here and dealing with the imperfections of a man. I've made a choice. I've made a choice that the fantasy and delusional world, even though it comes with its drawbacks, it's still better than actually going over here and dealing with anything else. That's the decision that Kravaya has made. That's the decision that she has made. And therefore, she's really not open to listening to anyone that keeps telling her Santa Claus does not exist. She don't want to hear it. She doesn't want to hear it at all. And another thing, another part with Kravaya is there were several times in the interview when I was a little bit lost, to be honest with you. I felt like there was some double-minded thinking of Kravaya. And but which I know that happens when people live in a fantasy land because what they do is they bounce back and forth from the fantasy to the reality. And so then what happens is they don't line up because they're recalling things from the fantasy land and then they're talking about it over here, and it makes it weird. It's almost like talking to a person, like I said, who believes in Santa Claus, and they start talking about things like elves and Mrs. Claus and the North Pole and all this other kind of stuff. And you're like, what are you talking about? None of those things exist. But then they pop over here, and then they're talking about real things like going to Amazon and ordering toys, or going to Toys R Us. And you're like, Santa Claus, the elves, Mrs. Claus is fake. Amazon and, well, Toys R Us is out of business. That's how old I am. Amazon and Target is real, but I'm confused because you're mixing a fantasy and reality, and it's confusing me. And so there was a couple of times when Kravaya confused me. And then I found out she was a Gemini, y'all. And I was like, oh, it makes all the sense. You know, I didn't really used to pay too much to zodiac signs or astrological signs. But once I started doing these reality TV shows and y'all start peeping me on the signs, I start paying attention a little bit more. And man, Geminis be all over the place. The double-mindedness of Geminis is real. The double-mindedness of Geminis is a real thing. And before I didn't really used to, give it too much credence, but now I do. I really do. So at the end, she revealed she was a Gemini, and it really did make all sense, which also explains to me why she can live in these two worlds, this fantasy world and the real world. Because I can tell you, she is a very lucid, intelligent woman. So when she's talking this brand strategist stuff and this career focus stuff, let me tell you, Kravaya is on point. I would hire her if I had something big or brand. I would hire her. I'd be like, how much is your fee? I would pay it because she's really good. But when she flips over here to this other channel, I'm like, what am I watching? The Twilight Zone? Is this the Twilight Zone? What is going on? Like I said, it's weird that she's so good at strategy over here and doesn't have a problem with it. It's almost like you got a dentist with a jacked up teeth. You got a dentist with jacked up teeth. He's really good what he did. He graduated at the top of his class. He got honor society, but all his teeth are jacked up. Or a cardiologist who is 200 pounds overweight, talking to you about what you need to do to lose weight to make your heart healthy, and the cardiologist 200 pounds. Oh, it's confusing. It is confusing. So let's go on and talk about some of this double-mindedness of Kravaya. So the first part, of course, they start talking about you have high standards, you have high standards, and Kravaya was like, first she was denying it. She was like, I don't really think that I have high standards. I don't think that I'm a gold digger. And then she said, well, maybe I do have high standards. So she flipped. She was, well, maybe I do have high standards. And then she went on to say, well, are high standards negative or are high standards healthy? I said, okay, Kravaya. Okay, so you do have high standards or you don't have high standards? She said, let's roll with you. So you do have high standards. She said, well, are high standards negative or are they healthy? Well, it depends, Kravaya, because standards are in relationship to other things. It's like someone telling you asking too much for your house. You're asking too much for your house in relationship to the market value of other houses in the area. I'm just not going to look at your house by itself. I'm going to look at your house in relationship to all the other houses out here. And I'm going to say that based on all the other houses out here, your price for your home is higher than all the other ones. So if I tell you your standards are high, I'm talking about it in relationship to everyone else out here. I'm like, I don't know why this is a hard concept. And then she said, well, maybe my standards aren't just high enough. Maybe the producers didn't produce men that came around that also had maybe the producers didn't bring men on the show that met my high standards. Ooh, Is that a put down in relationship to defending your high standards so that your high standards aren't high? Maybe the men aren't good enough for you? But then the brand strategist came out. See, that was the personal Kravaya talking. Then the brand strategist starts thinking, oh my God, that didn't sound good on TV. That isn't nice, Kravaya. Let me change what I say. Oh, and then quickly she changes the tune and she says, oh, well, wait a minute. That's not true. There were really some good men. I could find some good in all the men. I'm telling you, this girl could give you whiplash. She could give you whiplash. First, she says her standards aren't high. Then she says, well, they are high because that's good and that's healthy. Then she says the problem was there weren't enough good men to choose from on the show. But then she says, oh, no, that's not true. There are some good men. There's some things. There's good in everybody. Who are we talking to? Are we talking to Santa Claus? Or are we with the elves running around? Or are we talking about, are we back down here on Earth? Kravaya, like I tell you, her problem is bigger than just trying to find a man with money. Kravaya's brain is part fantasy world, a part reality, and she can't reconcile the two. So she bounces back and forth between them. So the next time Kravaya enters the fantasy world was when she talks about when she first showed up on the show. And she said when she first showed up at the mansion, she said her imagination had run wild. She said she walked in full of imagination. Like I said, a fantasy world. She didn't know who would be there in this imaginary mansion world that she had created. She said she imagined walking in and finding a Morris chestnut. She said it, y'all. She said she imagined walking in and finding a Morris chestnut at the mansion. Ain't Morris Chestnut married with kids to a woman for damn near 30, 40 years? I don't know. I know he's been married a long time to the same woman. But Kravaya said, you know what? She imagined walking in and finding a Morris chestnut in the mansion. Like I said, it's more than high standards. It's borderline delusional in the fantasy world. Christal XO said, what you mean? What you mean? Haven't you watched I'm going to say Married at First Sight. Haven't you watched a Ready to Love before? And she said, well, I really only watched one other show before, one other episode, and that was the season before this last Miami, which was the season of, what was it, with Clifton and Joy. So then I said, well, you're a strategist. Why wouldn't you do your research on the show so that you could come up with a strategy? Like I said, professional world doesn't line up with the world of dating. You're a strategist, and you mean to tell me you didn't go back and watch previous shows so that you could come on the show with a winning strategy? It's odd to me, but instead you showed up at a mansion thinking you was going to see Morris Chestnut. Woo, you can't make this stuff up, y'all. You can't make it up. So then Christal said, well, even in the real world, let's forget about Ready to Love. Christal says, well, even in the real world, if you go to any type of party, event, or whatever else, typically only more than 20% of the men are fine. That's what Christal said. So even in the real world, why would you come to Ready to Love thinking it was going to be a room full of fine men? Because that's what Kravaya said. She's like, we are in a Miami, and it's a city full of fine men. And what Kravaya said, she thought she was going to walk into a room full of fine men. So not only did the strategist not do her homework in knowing what Ready to Love was really about, she also figured that the Ready to Love mansion was going to defy reality, where even as Christal XO said, 20% are fine, which that ain't even the case. 20% of the men are not fine, but we'll even roll with that because that's better than what Kravaya is thinking when she was thinking she was going to walk into the room and 100% of the men were going to be fine. Woo. I'm telling you, this is like talking to a 14-year-old talking about they still believe in Santa Claus. After a while, you first start trying to tell them those Santa Claus exists. Then after a while, you just say, you know what? It's actually easier for me to just drop down into a fantasy world and start talking about elves in the North Pole, because trying to drag them out of it is going to be too much work. Too much work. So then Kravaya started talking about the men had a whole lot of options on the show, but the women didn't. So this started coming to the land of, I think, looks. So basically saying a lot of the women look really good, which I think they do look good. And the men, somehow, it was being classified that the men's physical appearance didn't measure up to the woman's physical appearance, as if there were more fine women than there were fine men. Let me tell you one thing I really don't like this argument when women do this. I really think women should stay away from comparing their looks to men's looks. If you want to compare your looks as a woman to other women's looks, I think that's okay, because I think you're talking about the same things, apples to apples, and you both have the same things that you can do to make yourself attractive. If a woman wants to do her hair, so can the other woman. If a woman wants to wear makeup, so can another woman. If a woman wants to get cosmetic surgery on certain features, so can another woman. But what I don't like is when women who have fake hair, fake lashes, makeup, injections, waist trainers, Spanx, heels, fake nails. Women have all these things that they've done to elevate their look, which they should. They've done all these things to elevate their look. Then they go and say, I look better than all these men in the room. And these men have none of these things. None of them. It is an unfair comparison. The only time I could agree that all these women are more fine than all these men on these shows is if all these women showed up exactly like all these men, and that is with no heels on, no waist trainers, no Spanx, no lashes, no makeup, okay, no hair, no nothing. Raw in their raw look, because that's how the men are showing up. No enhancements, none whatsoever. I tell you, I'm all for a woman comparing herself and saying, I look better than that woman. That's fine. Do it all you want, because that means you've done more to yourself to enhance your beauty than that other woman. And you can now say, you know what? I think I am a step above her. I don't care. Do it all you want. But it is an unfair comparison to say it with men. So then Christal XO tried to, talk her down off the fantasy world and saying, well, looks aren't everything, and everything's not about looks, Kravaya. And then they started talking about Dre and Kravaya was like, oh yeah, I know everything's not about looks. And Dre, he's a wonderful guy, his career, this. She started giving Dre a lot of compliments. But in the end, she put him in the friend zone because of his looks. I tell you, it's double-mindedness. It is a double-mindedness. In the end, she said all these great things about Dre. There was pretty much nothing she didn't like in terms of his personality or anything. In the end, he was put in the friend zone because of looks and his height. Woo! I'm telling y'all, it was a lot. It was a lot. So Kravaya did say that when she saw Blake walk into the mansion, she thought he was really, really handsome. And I think Blake thought the same thing about Kravaya. To be honest with you, I can see that Blake physically was definitely probably Kravaya's type. And I actually believe that Kravaya was Blake's type. That's why when they first got together, they sort of found their way together. But then once they started talking and opened up their mouths, they realized, oh, heck no, this ain't going to work. But she said she thought that Blake was really handsome. And she also thought that Mark Anthony was also a very good looking. But another moment that came where I was like, a fantasy versus reality was Kravaya was saying that when she first came to the mansion, she would sit over in the corner all by herself, and she wasn't getting up and mixing and mingling with men. Now remember, she's a brand strategist, and she talks about how she knows how to work a room. This is what she says. And I can tell you, I'm giving her flowers on that because I believe it. I believe she knows how to work a room. But she said when she came to the mansion, she sat over in the corner and she said she ain't working the room. She's going to sit over here on the corner because she's here to be chased. And I'm thinking, what? That's not the strategy of the game. No one is telling you you got to chase down men. But the strategy of sitting over in the corner and waiting for everybody to come to you, that ain't a good strategy either. Woo, I don't know where she came up with this strategy for Ready to Love, but it's a bad one. It is a real bad one. And that's why I'm telling you that this dating strategy she has is equally as bad. No matter what the data tells her, she's sticking with her bad dating strategy. And I don't know, I kind of feel sorry for her. I really hope that someone comes along and really opens her eyes to the fact that her strategy is bad. She got a bad dating strategy. She said the producers were trying to tell her, you need to get up and start walking around and approach some people. And she said no. But you know who did approach her over in the corner? Dre. She said Dre was all over her. She said, in fact, after a while, Dre was talking to her so long, she was like, oh, I got to talk to other people. And so she finally got up and walked away. See what happens? See what happens in that strategy? You sit over the corner and you wait for somebody to approach you because you want to be chased. And guess what happened? You got chased by the wrong person you didn't want. She said that not only was Dre all up on her at the mansion, she was trying to wiggle loose from him. And in fact, after Dre got eliminated, he waited over an hour outside the mansion just to talk to Kravaya some more. So now you want to be chased, but you like, I don't want to be chased by him. Like I said, that's the same thing I'm saying over here about Jeffrey. When Jeffrey says she want to be led by a man who's a protector, provider, and a leader. No, you won't want to be led by everybody. You don't really want to be led. Just like Kravaya says she wants to be chased, she don't want to be chased. A Kravaya wants to choose. It's two different things. She says she wants a man to choose her. No, she wants to do the choosing. Like I said, don't listen to what people say. Listen to what people do. So then she starts talking about, everybody says I'm picky, I'm this, I got too high standards, and that's why I can't get a man. She goes, I don't have a problem getting a man. I don't have a problem getting men. She goes, I get men all the time. I meet men all the time. I hobnob in these circles, and there's wonderful men, wonderful men, wonderful men. So she went on talking about how, she comes in contact with a lot of really upscale type of men who are of high caliber. So you're listening, you're going, oh, okay. So it's not a problem of you meeting them. It's not a problem of you being around them. But somehow or another, you still haven't met your goal, Kravaya. We're talking about your goal. Your goal is to be married, have kids over here. So I don't know why we're talking about just meeting men or being around men, because that's not your goal. If that was your goal, then yeah, guess what, girl? You successful. But if your goal is to have more than just meeting them or being around them, then you haven't met your goal, which means your strategy that you've been employing hasn't allowed you to meet your goal. I don't understand what's so difficult about that. So then she said, well, that's why I came on Ready to Love. I figured I'd rather do something different. This isn't different. I really don't like when people think they're doing something different because they go to another venue, but they carry the same attitude. You just said that the venue isn't the problem. Here's the same double-mindedness. The problem isn't you coming in contact with these men. The problem is that once you come in contact with the man or they're around you, you're not able to go from that point to where you're really trying to get to, which is marriage and kids. So what difference does it make if you come onto Ready to Love, if you're coming onto Ready to Love with the same strategy? So this isn't anything new, Kravaya. This is just a different venue. So it's delusion. You're making yourself believe you're doing something different, but you're not really doing anything different. You're just going to a different venue. It's why she was disappointed, because she thought the venue would have a bunch of fine men and the most eligible bachelors in Miami, but she still showed up at the venue with the same strategy and mindset. Well, why would there be a different outcome? I don't understand it one bit, but you know what? She seems to understand her own method, but it's still not producing the results she wants. And she's not alone. This really isn't about Kravaya, because there's a lot of people who think this same way. Men and women. Men think the same way. A lot of men think the same way. But more than not, it's a lot of women who think like this. But men also have the same problem with developing a winning strategy and dispelling myths and fantasies that are preventing them from actually developing a winning strategy to get what they want. It is a problem in dating, period. So as much as Christal, I think, tried to tell her that maybe her standards were too high, she's being too picky. As I say, she's believing in Santa Claus, and Santa Claus doesn't exist. She then started saying, no, because I've seen it before. So then I said to myself, Kravaya, where have you seen this man that you say exists that makes you believe he exists? Where have you seen Santa Claus? This is when you get a person who still believes. When have you ever seen a Santa Claus besides on TV or some white man dressed up in a costume? When have you really seen him? And she says, well, my friends are married to some wonderful men. No, that doesn't count. Because let me tell you, single women, Married women don't tell you everything going on in their life. They don't tell you. They don't. They don't have an obligation to tell you. They don't tell you what they're putting up with men. They don't tell you things they've had to forgive of men. They don't tell you things they've had to overlook from men. Married women are not 100% telling you everything that they have to go through in a marriage or overlook. And men aren't telling other men. Married people are not divulging everything about their personal life to you single people. So you get this idea that this man exists because your friend over here, a LaQuisha, has got one of the men you would want to have. No, because probably if you really knew everything about the LaQuisha's man, you wouldn't want LaQuisha's man. Is what Michelle Obama tried to tell women about, even her husband, Barack Obama, the president of the United States that everyone lusts over. I am well aware of myself that I probably wouldn't have even gone out with Barack Obama before he was president. You know why? Because he was a smoker. And I don't like men who smoke. So I even know that even if by some strange way Obama would have been interested in me, I probably wouldn't have gone out with him because I would have eliminated him because I don't like men who smoke cigarettes. But some women try to pretend like they wouldn't have eliminated these very men that now they talk about are their primo men. They talk about they don't want to have to raise a man. They don't want to have to build a man. They don't want to have to do all these things. But then once another woman, the Michelle Obamas of the world or other people come around and get men to stop smoking, get men to work out, help men improve their health, help men get their finances. Now all of a sudden other women say, oh, that's the man that I want. The fantasy. Because let me tell you, if you are in a long-term marriage, a long-term relationship, you both are building each other. I don't know where people get this idea that you're not going to have to help build a person within inside a relationship. That's the purpose of a relationship, to make each other better. Iron sharpens iron. What you mean? You're not going to go into a relationship and make a person better. What, you just going to go into a relationship and take? You're not going to invest in that person. You're just going to receive. Give me a break, people. The mindset is all jacked up out here. The idea of what a relationship really is not even what a relationship is. Because if you're not coming in my life to make me better, if you're not coming in my life to uplift me, if you're not coming into my life so that when I look back on 5 years, I say I'm a better woman than I was 5 years ago, then I don't want you. If all you're doing is coming here to take from me of things that have been built up inside of me and now use me for them, take things from me and benefit from them, but you don't want to look at any other area of my life and make me better, then I don't want you. I don't want you. That's why I don't know why these women wouldn't understand. Why would a man want a woman when a woman walks around talking about, I don't want to have to build up no man? Why would he be with you? Why? What are you offering? But Kravaya wants to believe in Santa Claus. She says she really does say there are a lot of women around her who have really tried to get her to stop believing in Santa Claus. Christal XO told the story of Michelle Obama. She pushed that aside. She's told her girlfriends have told her, listen, sometimes you have to put on your Obama coat. And we were like, what's the Obama coat? And she said her friend told her, sometimes you have to put on your coat and go out into the world and move on and act as if everything is okay at home, and sometimes it isn't. What her friend was trying to tell her is sometimes the things you see out here that you're idolizing is not the real story, that behind closed doors, there's real work going on. And sometimes that's what you have to do when you're inside of a relationship, being a husband or a wife. And Kravaya overlooked it and said, I know I don't want to do none of that work. She even said that she recognized in her mother's and father's relationship, I guess her mother and father broke up, got married again a second time. She said she has seen times in her mother's and father's relationship where her mother held her father down, where her father held her mother down. And she says she can also see signs where when her mother was holding her father down, it was both helpful and harmful to her, because her mother also might have had to sacrifice for her father in certain times of their life, and it held her mother back. But she can also see when there were times when it benefited her mother. So she saw the pluses and the minuses, but then she still came to the same conclusion. I don't want to do that. Like I said, it is a refusal to come out of the fantasy world. It is a refusal to stop believing in Santa Claus, because if I stop believing in Santa Claus, that he doesn't exist, then that means I'm going to have to move and do things differently, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to stop believing in Santa Claus because I'm afraid, mommy and daddy, if I stop believing in Santa Claus, I won't get no gifts anymore. And what is Christmas going to look like if I don't believe in Santa Claus anymore? So I'm going to just keep believing in him. I'm going to just keep believing in him. So the fantasy can keep going. So we get introduced to the Gemini again, of Kravaya, when she says, she knows how to mix and mingle, but she says she knows she comes off guarded. That's what she says. Like I said, all this pickiness, high standards, it's just a guard. It's a fence around her. And she says she really believes in therapy. This is going to be my tip for Kravaya, since she likes to go to therapy and she believes in it, which I think is great. She needs to go to a therapist, and she needs to give the therapist an explicit direction and say, I want to know, I need you to help me figure out, why do I use pickiness and high standards to guard me and protect me? That is the question. I need you and I, therapists, to go deep and figure out, when I develop this guardedness, when I develop this pickiness, and how over the years, how I now use this to guard me and protect me. Because first of all, kids aren't just born this way. Kids are typically born open books. Something happens along the way, whether it's in your child life, your teen years, your adult years, something happens along the way, and you start developing defense mechanisms to protect you from situations that harmed you. And this pickiness that Kravaya has is guardedness and high standards. It is a protection for her. So she starts going on saying she starts off situations guarded. She actually admits it. And then what she says is, I make the men prove to me that they're worthy for me to take down my guardedness. What? So what you're saying is, I enter situations guarded, then the men have to prove to me that they're worthy for me to take down my guard. Well, that's not normal. That's not normal. That is not how a dating process should work. You should come into a dating process open. Does it mean that you don't need to have some discernment? Does it mean that you don't also have to look out for dangers? Absolutely. But you should not come into a dating situation guarded. And that's what Kravaya says she does. So then she sits back with her pickiness, her high standards as her doorman. That is what her pickiness and high standards are. It's her doorman. It's her security guard. And then he gets to pick and choose. He gets to look down the man and say, are you worthy enough to come in here into this room and talk to Kravaya? Because I'm here to protect and guard Kravaya. That's what she does. Her pickiness, her high standards are her security guard and her doorman. And she makes men stand outside the door, answer questions to the security guard before they're let in. Well, guess what? Men aren't doing that. Men aren't doing that. And this is why she meets the men. She's in a room with the men. The men knock on her door, but it goes no further. Because men are not climbing walls, and men aren't going through security guards to get to her. So then she has this lucid moment where she says, she sums it up really well with the dating world. I'm like, okay, here's the real word, Kravaya. She's about to show up again. And it's because Christal XO says, well, what's going on then? If you know, what's been some of your dating woes? And she says, well, the world has changed. She eloquently sums up, the world has changed. Social media has changed the world. Men have access to so many beautiful women. She knows she's beautiful, but she knows she's one amongst a lot of women, especially in Miami. Men have so many options, and so they don't need to make decisions. They don't need to choose because they can just bounce around from woman to woman. She's summing up really, really well, and I'm agreeing with her. I am agreeing with everything that she's saying. So she says, I don't want a man that has anything less than that. I don't want to have to build a man. I don't want to have to build a bear. I don't want to have to do any of that stuff with a man. And I want him to display all these qualities right up front with me. I want to actually see what I'm getting. He has to be doing these things, not on his way to getting these things, but he has to be this person already. And I said, okay, Kravaya. So then they start talking about, well, what about you? What do you bring to the table that man would choose you? So she goes on and talks about that she believes that there's really not too much she has to do except be in her femininity and be nice. What? So you're just saying all these men, these high caliber men, have all these women to choose from, all these options, and you're saying all you need to do is be feminine and be nice? Girl, how is that? That doesn't even make any sense, that your job is real small to get these so-called men who have all of these options, but somehow or you don't have to do that much. So right when you're kind of vibing with her and you're listening, you're saying, okay, well, she's mentioning some things that aren't necessarily materialistic or all these other sorts of things. Then she starts saying, yeah, so since I can't meet him, that's pretty much what I do. I invest in my career. I invest in the car I'm driving. I invest in my closet, in the house I'm building. She starts like mentioning all these sort of materialistic things. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you just say that materialistic things aren't the issue? But now you're talking about how your whole focus is career, cars, houses, and fancy closets. And then she says, oh, well, that's only because that's what occupies me now, because there's no real man coming over here vying for me. Wait a minute. So what you're saying is you're doing one thing now because you're not in the relationship or you're not in the marriage. But if you were in the marriage, you wouldn't be focused on these sort of materialistic things about how much your shoes cost, the car you're driving, the house you're driving. Well, that would mean a man would have to pick you for potential too. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You're saying you don't want to pick a man because of his potential on who he could be. And you're going off what you see in front of you. But you're also describing that who you are here now, you're saying you could also elevate to a different type of woman, but you're not going to elevate to that woman yet because the man hasn't chosen you. Well, that means he would have to choose you over potential too. He would have to choose you watching you now, how you move and shake, and then hoping that the potential in you would be that you could transform into this other woman that isn't about the car you drive, all about your career, your fancy closet, the restaurants you go, or the people you hobnob with. Woo! I tell you, the double-mindedness, the contradictions, it will make your head a spin. Kravaya said when she was at the mansion on day one, she was the best version of herself. We were like, what? That looked like that was one of your worst days. She said that when she was at the mansion, she gave those men the best version of herself. She just told us she was sitting over the corner and wouldn't even walk around and talk to nobody. Okay, Kravaya. So you walked into the mansion with the best version of yourself. Okay, got it. What happened after that? Nobody wanted to call or talk to her. She said that nobody really wanted to call and talk to her. And by the time they did text her or call her after the mansion, all they was texting her was, hey, what's up? How's your day? And she said, that's not enough for me to let my guard down. She said, I don't like men when they just send me messages, WYD, what you doing, how you doing. No woman likes those messages. We know that. But Kravaya is saying, I sat in a corner and didn't even walk around and talk to men. And now she's mad that when men finally did talk to her, they told her a WYD. So they gave her the same energy as she gave them at that mansion, according to her. But then there's a problem. And then Christal XO said, was there anything you would do differently? She said, yeah, going back, she would do differently with Mark Anthony, because Mark Anthony was one of the ones she thinks that texted her what you doing or how you doing. and she curbed him because she said she didn't even respond to Mark Anthony because she didn't like the text he sent to her. And when she tried to come back and double up on Mark Anthony told her, once you curb me once, you don't get a second chance. Like I said, a bad strategy. But let me tell you, Kravaya is sticking to this strategy. This ain't the first time some man has told Kravaya, get out my face. But she continues to do it. She continues to do the same strategy. She might be successful in coming up with strategies for her brand, for brands of other companies. But her strategy for her own brand, her own dating world is horrible. It needs a whole revamp. She needs to hire a whole new team to come up with a strategy for her. Because right now she's in charge of her own brand and her own strategy. And she's doing a horrible job. They started talking a little bit about how it went so bad with Mark Anthony, and they said, I think it happened all over the spoiled comment. And she said, I didn't know that spoiled comment was such a trigger with people. How didn't you know the spoiled comment would be such a trigger? Has anybody ever looked up the word spoiled? It's not a positive word. Spoiled means diminished. Spoils mean ruined. The milk spoiled. You ruined something. So when you're talking about yourself in the terminology of being spoiled, it really isn't a glowing term to use for yourself. People need to stop using it. So then she says, I didn't know it was such a trigger. Well, why not? You ain't done no research. You haven't done any research on men and how they would view the word spoiled, men or women. How wouldn't you know that that's not a word to use on a first date? That's about as worse as Febreze are talking about sex on a first date. Why would I want to have a conversation about you with sex, Febreze? I don't even know you. Why would I want to have a conversation with you about spoiling you and I don't even know you? Like I said, she lives in a fantasy world. She's talking about Santa Claus and elves and the North Pole. And you're like, that ain't even Earth. That ain't even the real world. No one talks like that. Poor Kravaya. And then she tried to clean it up. Once again, here come the double mindedness. I don't mean spoiled. When I said spoiled, I meant a kiss on the forehead, things like that, real nice things. And she said, or maybe you go out and buy me a purse from TJ Maxx because I'm on my period and I'm in a bad mood. A gift, Kravaya, a monetary, materialistic gift. Girl, like I said, she tries to get away from it, but then she just doubles right back to it. I don't know. My advice for Kravaya is going to be to go to counseling, figure out where she comes up with all this pickiness and guardedness that she has. The security guard of all her high standards is at the door. Doesn't want to let anybody in because they're afraid. She's afraid of something. I don't know what happened. What she's so afraid of. I don't know why she feels she can't let more people in. Okay. And why there's so much danger to that. She's got to figure that out because she really is keeping herself set apart from a lot of people. She got herself sitting up in the VIP room with only 3 people around her with 10 security guards talking about I'm picky with high standards. And in the meantime, she ain't got no friends and nobody to dance with, no nothing. The pickiness is not helping her. It's not even producing a better quality of life. But she holds on to it because it's her protection. But anyway, that's it, y'all. What you think? I know I talked a long time, but we'll definitely be doing more of these recap reviews, conversations as more of the exit interviews take place. That's it. I'll talk to you later. Bye.